with a house, I'm only putting down 3.5%, right? So, but I'm benefiting for appreciation of an average of 3% on 100% of the asset, right? Like
Yep.
on almost 600K of the asset, right? But with like a stock, unless
you're not going to get
leverage,
97% leverage on a stock.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you can find ways to do that, but generally speaking, you can't get that type of benefit. So it almost seems like a cheat code to be able to put, go so low money down. And now too, you published something about, the FHA, that upfront, fee went from like, 85 basis points.
Oh yeah. The annual mortgage insurance premium is a lot less now. Yeah.
So that's even better, right? So, and you get, your regular rate is lower than what a conventional would be before the PMI or MIP. So yeah, all in all, it seems pretty favorable. And that's why, since we use my FHA on this property, then we'll be using Sandy's FHA on the next property and go from there.
Brilliant strategy. Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 28 of the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Stephen Tran. I'm an Oregon realtor and I invest in multifamily properties and in short-term rentals. And my co-host on this episode is Jordan Lee. He is a lender licensed in at least 7 states from what I know, and he invests in single-family homes. And on this episode, we interview some of my very first clients, Rob, Tyse, and Sandy McCartin. They're very good friends of mine. They're actually some of my very first clients ever. We actually met on the Bigger Pockets Forum. They were looking to move to Portland from Chicago and were looking to house hack or jump into a duplex or a multifamily. And so you kind of get to hear in this podcast their journey of finding a property, which was very difficult, in the times when interest rates were really low. And then their journey of renovating a house that's over 100 years old. So stay tuned for this episode. It's a great one. Check it out. Hey guys, welcome to the Realized Gains podcast. I'm Stephen Tran.
And I'm Jordan Lee here, your co-host. And tell us about our guest, Stephen.
Yeah, so we have Rob and Sandy. These are my friends and some of my first clients. Yeah. So can you kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having us. We're super excited to be here and talk about our real estate journey. And just to kind of tee it up, we are really at the beginning of our real estate journey. We have one property. It's a duplex in North Portland that we are house hacking in, and we are currently looking for property number 2. So,
who's helping you with that?
You guys.
Well, let's walk that back a little bit though. Like, so you bought in Portland, but you're not from Portland originally. You guys moved out here. What made you think about Portland, and what were you guys doing before? Like, obviously, real estate's not your career. So help us understand how that started.
Yeah, so Rob and I are CPAs. We met several years ago at a Big 4 public accounting firm in Chicago. And Rob was really the one that got into real estate investing in the first place, got the itch.
Yeah, so I think the origination of it all is I got interested in personal finance, right? Okay. And then within that space, you're looking at, returns on investments, various equity and things like that. And then I learned about real estate. I'm like, this is amazing, right? Like the wealth accumulation, the tax benefits, the principal and loan pay down. So I was like, wow, we need to get on this. So I started educating myself like crazy. Went to the normal places you'd expect, like your Bigger Pockets podcast. Of course, this podcast hadn't come out yet. I'd be all over Realized Gains. And yeah, so then the next step was like, okay, I need to convince my partner here that this is like the appropriate, next step. And I mean, it's a big thing to ask someone to get into real estate and then want to do a lot of it. So essentially what I did was I said, hey, do you want to take a real estate investing for beginners course with me. And I don't know if you guys have heard of Paula Pant, but she's into personal finance and that whole FIRE space.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So financially independent, retire early is what that acronym stands for. And Sandy and I took the course together, and then she had the itch.
Was this an online course or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really nice. It was one of those where you can just kind of watch the pre-recorded videos, but they had like forums and group sessions and things like that where you could ask your questions too. There wasn't any information that was like life-changing in there that you wouldn't normally get in some sort of like book or whatnot, but there was more accountability. There was other people in the class, and it was help promoting you to take action, right? Because I feel like
and
that's
gives you confidence.
Yeah. And
what's the homework look like?
There were quizzes, yeah.
No, there were questions and things like calculating your cash on cash.
Oh, you were like running scenarios, kind of.
Yeah. And it goes over all the different types of strategies and everything like that. And that's when I realized, I'm like, we need to pick one of these lanes. And the easiest way I thought into real estate was house hacking, which is of course what we're doing now. But essentially it is when you're occupying a residence and you're renting out some part of that. So whether it's like 1 unit, 2 units, it could be a bedroom, it could be a bunch of different ways to do it. But that's when I realized, I'm like, this is the safest way to do it. It's like training for beginning landlords too, right? Like when something comes up, you live there and you can address it, right? And then the other aspect of it was like, all right, how can we go low money down? So, in a year or two from now, we can do this again. And that's when we decided in terms of financing that like FHA was the route. So we took the course, had house hacking as a strategy, had the FHA route. And then essentially it was, okay, we're living in Chicago. Let's look at various walk-ups and brownstones that would help achieve this purpose.
Yeah, well, and to your point about how did we get from Chicago to Portland? So after finishing the course, we were super excited and just ready to hit the ground running. And so we got a real estate agent in Chicago and started looking at houses there. But also, this was a time during COVID when we were working remotely and we knew we didn't want to stay in Chicago long term. We were kind of ready for a new adventure and just wanted to try out a new city.
Was this the middle of the winter?
Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of came to the realization that, first of all, with the FHA loan that we wanted to use, you'd have to live in the house as your primary residence for a year, and that would set us back a full year before we could move somewhere else. And we were at this real sweet spot from working from home where we could keep our same jobs and move to a new city. So we just decided to switch gears completely and look completely at Portland. We chose it for the nature, but also I have some extended family here, so it was an easy transition and a place we had visited many times and loved. And so, that's when we started looking at Portland, and we were doing some research on neighborhoods and things like that. And Rob went in on Bigger Pockets.
And Stephen kind of hinted at this, right? Yeah. That, we were one of his first clients. I wrote like a question on Bigger Pockets. I think it was asking about like, best neighborhoods or like even like what neighborhoods have the best returns or things like that. And Stephen, among a few other people, responded, and I chatted with a few of the agents, and me and Sandy just fell in love with Stephen. We're like, wow, look at all he's accomplished in a short period of time. It seems like, he's a few years ahead of us, but he's making it seem very attainable. He's showing us the ropes that it's, something that's not too difficult as long as you put in the work. And so I think it was a pretty easy choice then that we went with Stephen. So.
And we wanted him to be our friend since we were moving to a new city.
That part. No, I distinctly remember on the forum, it felt very salesy. Like a lot of them were just, hit me up. I have so much experience in the area and I'm ready to help sell you a house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was 5 of those and I was like, this is just good information. Here you go. Like, is this helpful?
Yeah. And then we came out to visit too, and then we met in person. I forget, it was like Pearl District or whatnot, but we got along really well, and we just had a great feeling about, both you and Portland, because at that point too, we were just trying to confirm that Portland was the right place to move. So,
then the search began. So we after we did that one visit where we saw Steven, I think we saw 1 or 2 houses with you in person then. But from that point forward, our search was primarily virtual from Chicago.
Which presents a lot of challenges too when you're new to a city or whatnot.
And you've never bought a home before.
Yes.
Exactly. The whole process was new. And maybe, Steven, you can talk a little bit about like what that was like showing places without us being there physically.
Oh, yeah. I think we tried FaceTime. It was choppy here and there.
Yeah.
Tried video. Tried send, like, it's tough. And then like, it's like, okay, we're in the Sellwood district. Like, okay, well, can you tell me about it? I was like, okay, I can tell you about it, but it's really hard to not like drive through, get a feel for a neighborhood, see if you want to live there, if it's like the type of urban experience that you want. So, it was really tough, but I'm glad that like, we took our time. We had a couple failed contracts and landed on this one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And I think like maybe a good recommendation of what came out of the whole virtual like experience, what really did end up working was, instead of FaceTime where it can be choppy and you can't really replay it back, is you started taking these videos.
Yes, exactly.
And you would focus in on certain areas. You'd narrate the whole thing. And it was amazing because we got perfect footage then. We could watch it on our own time, rewind it and all.
And we could still watch it in real time. He'd send it to us right away. And then if we had questions, he's still on the property and can ask the listing agent or whoever.
And the neighborhood, you were also showing us like both sides of the street, everything like that. So that was helpful too.
Oh, you're really just selling my services.
No, but I felt
because not all listings have the virtual walkthrough or the video.
And there's like tenants in some of them too, so you can't always get a complete, I guess, perspective of all the rooms and the condition and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very honest about these properties because at the end of the day, like, you get a listing and it has the pretty pictures and it makes everything look better. And for me, I know it's like, well, obviously, as soon as we walk in, we're going to say this sucks or this is rough or this needs work. And, you might as well put that up front. And I feel like a lot of agents kind of gloss over that information,
Yeah.
So.
And maybe it's helpful too. We can talk a little bit about what we were looking for, right? So like,
that's true. You had a pretty specific criteria, which helps narrow things down.
Exactly, Jordan. So I think we were looking for something in like the 500 to 700K range, right? Duplex, triplex type, so we could use the FHA, but something that needed work, right? Where we could have that value add, that forced appreciation. Because before this, we had never ever used tools, right? And we'll get into how we did full renovation. Like I'm telling you, like you can verify this with my father. Like I barely swung a hammer, like absolutely no power tools experience. I'm not handy. I don't believe that you were. No offense.
You weren't
handy. Scared of the power tools.
And even when Steven in some of the videos would be saying like, oh yeah, skim coat this, and I'd be like, what the hell is he I don't know any of these terms. Like we absolutely
the drywall will be fine. Just nail the drywall to the studs. It'll be perfectly good afterwards.
And I think a lot of that it was like ignorance is bliss too. But we'll get to it into a bit in terms of like the resources that are out there, and it's really not a big deal. But in terms of what we were looking for, something where we could bring the rents up right once people turned over, and we wanted that forced appreciation, build that equity, and because also like we were targeting like a certain type of renter too, and
we just wanted to learn. Like we had never done any renovations or home projects before, and we wanted to be able to put sweat equity into our properties. So we just wanted a place where we could learn.
Exactly.
And I think part of the criteria too is obviously, I mentioned this all the time, because just because you get, a house hacking situation, you also have to live there and you also have to like the neighborhood. So that was like a big thing. Like, how are we going to find a multifamily that's in a good neighborhood that's walkable and has, restaurants and food and beer nearby that's interesting. So that was also part of the criteria.
Yeah.
It's hard to find all that. And I think, from talking with you too, it was like the biggest key is like taking action, getting started. You can go for home runs later, but let's just like get a base hit, try to, achieve most of your guys' criteria. And we did, right? There's always going to be something, right? And with our house, it's a 100+ year old home, 1915, right? So the inspection report I don't have to have never bought a house before to know that like 120-page inspection report's bad.
Wow.
As much as
Wow.
Steven tried to sugarcoat, I'm like, this just doesn't feel good. Like,
I try to sugarcoat it, not too much. It's just a lot of honest. Like, it's an old house. What are you gonna do? Like,
and it was a great inspector. He was just pretty detailed.
Yeah.
So
Very thorough.
yes, exactly. Comprehensive review there. But we got everything else we wanted, right? Like, we love the space, the neighborhood. We are a 1-minute walk over here from restaurants, bars, the Adidas HQ campus, and now there's a lot going up even on the street. So yeah, that was kind of like all the criteria of the place we were looking for, and then we started too of like trying to put in offers on places, and maybe you want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, like just to level set, this was summer 2021 when the market was red hot and interest rates were low, and everybody was out here trying to buy a house. So I felt like every single weekend in the summer, it was the same thing where a house would go on the market on Thursday. Everybody would put their offers in by Sunday. There'd be 20 plus offers, and the final price would go 100 to 150 over asking. And we would put in what we thought were really competitive offers on these houses, and we'd get nowhere close. Like
it really wasn't close, because I would look months after just to see kind of where we were, and sometimes you had a gauge of it, but it was like we were getting killed. Even that one home we went like, I think it was like 110 over. It was
that was a tough ask for you guys too. I was like, you're gonna have to go a lot over.
And that thing ended up going like another like 60 or 70 over.
Oh my gosh!
And I think we were like the 6th best offer, something. I forgot what it was exactly,
but it was 6, I think.
But a lot of it was like that. So then we were like, okay, let's like adjust the strategy here. Let's see which places actually make it through the weekend that are on the market for a bit. And then also the other thing was like when you come in with an FHA in your offer, typically, you know, the seller might hesitate. They're like, well, maybe financially they don't have everything in order, but in terms of our strategy then too, I heard it on a random podcast, and it may have been Bigger Pockets, but you know, if you can go in with your offer saying that you qualify for a conventional, but you have the option to do the FHA, then that might make it look a lot more attractive. And of course, Jordan was able to write it up like that into our offer. And the first time we did it was on this property. So it made it through the weekend, be on the market, I think, for like 30 days. And then we came in with conventional or FHA. And they accepted our offer. So it was a success after what felt like years, but really just a long summer.
I mean, yeah, and I'll go back to, the quote unquote failures of the contracts that didn't go through. You know, everybody, like you said, and their mom is waiting for low interest rates again. And it's like, well, this is what happens. The sellers, the agents, they don't have to give you any information. They're doing is building up a bidding war.
Yes.
That's truly what they did. And we weren't anywhere close. And they were just sitting back like, I don't know, higher sounds better.
Waiving inspections and all
waiving everything in the world.
So at that point, like I said, everybody wants lower interest rates, but at the end of the day, at that point, you barely even need a skilled agent. You need somebody who is willing to get their clients to, put that number this high, which was not fun for me or really anybody else who was trying to, work with buyers at that point. So, but we got this one.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So then I can think the next challenge is like, and this was even before we locked up this place, but also when you're looking for these FHA, right, you have to be in it for a year, which means it has to be an owner-occupied property. And a lot of these multifamilies,
in this circumstance, there was a tenant, right?
Exactly.
In both units.
Oh, that was a fun.
And Portland really enjoys incredibly high relocation costs when that is the case. But as part of our offer, like you mentioned,
we wrote in the relocation cost, even though it did not work out exactly as it should have, from what I remember.
There were hoarders living in the unit that we now occupy, and they did not move in on time. And we found out like an hour before the keys were to be handed over that they wanted to push the closing date to the following week. And then also written into that was like, and they can leave their stuff in the basement. And
come back and get
Come
it at
back
some
and
point.
get it.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So-
later.
So we walked in and the basement's just like jammed like almost to the ceiling
Oh boy.
with stuff. And
Interesting.
yeah, over the course of a few months, they came and grabbed a lot of their things, but we made a lot of runs to the dump
Hmm.
after that or to Goodwill. And
I think we were at the dump at the same time.
we were
We
at the
were.
dump at the same
Mhm.
time. I saw your
Yeah.
Instagram story and I'm like, we were like 2 spots away. How did I not see you?
Oh
The
man.
life of a renovator,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then do you want to talk a little bit about maybe the renovations? to
Well,
this
why don't
place,
you
or-
talk about just the condition of the house?
Yeah, what was it
General.
like?
It was pretty gross, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh,
It was so the kitchen and the bathroom were almost original to the house, or that's how it felt. It was
in our unit?
in our unit. Yep. So it was livable, but it wasn't comfortable.
Mhm.
Even like the kitchen, there's no dishwasher. The cabinets kind of were old wood, smelly. The bathroom was just, the layout was not very functional. It's
And-
really tight spaces.
And if you remember the shower or like behind the tub, there was
There's
a
a
crack
huge leak.
and it was just leaking into the basement.
Yeah.
And now like I looked back through, like I said, the 120-page inspection report, and somehow that was like the only thing not on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they can't look behind the walls. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspectors have a tough job. For sure.
So we knew that we wanted to update the kitchen and the bathroom. And then sort of the other thing that we actually didn't know when we were moving into this place, since we kind of did everything virtually, was just kind of how this neighborhood that we have is growing. And even just on our street, there's been, since we've lived here in the last year, there's been like 4 to 6 large 12-unit multifamily houses going up.
Mhm.
And so for us, that was kind of an opportunity to up our game here and up our rents here. So we were
Mhm.
thinking from the lens of, okay, if we can make a really nice kitchen and bathroom and then offer a lot of things that these new construction places can't offer, like extra space and the character and charm of an older house and a
Mhm.
parking spot and outdoor space,
A
then
little
we
gym
can
in the basement too.
yeah, then we can compete with these big guys next door. So that was sort of another lens we were taking to the renovations. And then also at the end of the day, as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to learn how to do renovation. So we kind of knew we were going to take on a little bit more than we maybe would with another rental, just because we wanted to get that full experience of what is it like going all the way down to the studs, redoing electrical and plumbing, and see what everything is like, so that in the future we know what we like doing and maybe what we don't want to take on again in the future. So that was kind of how we approached the renovation. And we had to be strategic about when we did it, because we were going to lose the kitchen and the bathroom that we had been living with during that time. So we had to wait until the second unit turned over, which happened over the summer. The tenants moved to California. So we kept the upstairs unit open during the summer in order to do the renovations. And
We moved up there.
yeah, we moved up there and freshened up upstairs at the same time, which was its own challenge as well.
And I think it's funny because when we started watching like various YouTube videos about like renovating and everything and following all the Instagram accounts and influencers,
Mhm.
like a lot of the advice you get is like, okay, for your first project, like start small, like, take a piece of furniture, right? Something very low risk
Yeah.
and try to flip that. Like, do not do a full kitchen or bathroom. And Sandy and I are like looking at one another and we were like, yikes. Well, the good news is Sandy has an awesome aunt and uncle who live in Portland, and maybe you can tell them about Tony, your uncle.
Yeah, my
as
uncle
well.
Tony. He's an architect and does a lot of independent contracting. He renovates houses all the time. So
Oh, nice.
he's our go-to guy. He
So
taught
our
us
coach, our
everything we know.
teacher.
Yeah. So in doing the renovation, he basically came in and he also knows the Portland code, which you really need somebody who understands that piece when you're doing a renovation. And my aunt's an industrial designer, so she helped us with the layouts and designing the space. And then my uncle Tony taught us literally everything. He would come over and give us lessons on how to build a wall, and then we would go and build the wall, little 2 foot by 3 foot wall with the corner and everything.
Oh, wow.
And then if we passed, then we got to build the wall in the bathroom for
The real wall.
Yeah.
Nice.
So they were super invaluable to us because we wanted that experience of doing everything ourselves. I think the only thing we ended up subbing out was the drywall, which I'm glad we did, because that would have been a lot of work. But everything else we did with the help of Tony. So
yeah, and I mean, for those people who haven't done anything before, it can seem very intimidating. However, like I said, if you just like throw on YouTube and just watch a few different ways to do something, right? You're going to be able to do it. And the best part of it is, even when you mess up, which we messed up at a very high rate, you can redo your work. So it's like, it's really not a huge deal. And even when you have to redo it, you often don't like, it's not a huge financial loss or anything like that, right? There wasn't anything where we're like, oh, that was $1,000 mistake. I think our biggest mistake was a funny one. It was like the paint. We bought the wrong paint color. We did like, so you're learning, right? Lessons the whole way, but you should get a little like, a sample, right? To see how it looks.
Yep.
And we ordered like a few $100s in paint for the whole upstairs. Oh, wow. And we got it and we put it on the wall. We're like, oh, geez, this is really dark.
Dry though?
Yeah.
Okay. It's different when it's wet versus dry, but yes.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a great color, and we were like,
green is just not a great choice.
So we still have all that paint if anyone wants a bunch of gallons of that.
You can put it in the.
You sold it so well, yeah.
But yeah, you're gonna make mistakes, and I don't think that you get good until you do something a few times. And I think in terms of like our relationship too, like in the beginning, we'd be working on something, we'd both be so frustrated. I think like one aspect of it was like, we just didn't know how to use certain tools. And so like you mess something up really easy, like a reciprocating saw will jump on you or like, if
I was terrified of that thing at first. Yeah. I didn't want to go anywhere near it. And Rod would be like, come watch me cut this thing. I'm like, no, I'm going to stay over here.
Yeah, so we had no idea what we were doing, and then we were both really frustrated. We're like, it's not as easy as the videos make it look, right? Like they're doing it perfect.
It takes about 3 times longer than the video.
Yeah, so we get in arguments there, and I think what ended up working well is then we kind of like picked our own projects, right? So like Sandy would do all of the tiling, and I didn't touch it. Like she'd be out there with the tiling saw, she'd do all the thin set, the grouting, everything, and I'd be working on something else, and then. What we noticed is near the end of kind of the renovations is we came back together to work on things. And that's when it was really fun because we were like, oh, we kind of know what we're doing. We're tiling now. Yeah, we're tiling for the 3rd time now. Like we know how this works and we know how to use this saw. So that was really nice to see that come full circle because I'm like, man, if we're going to be frustrated this whole project.
It's going to be fun.
Well, how much plumbing and electrical stuff did you end up doing?
Quite a bit. I mean, pretty much replaced everything.
Wow.
And again, Tony is the code guy, so he was the one that had everything planned out, but just taught us how to actually do the labor for it.
And that part wasn't terrifying to you because that's all.
No,
that part,
I actually loved the electrical.
Well, the electrical, everything's like turned off while you're working, right? So you're not going to die, which is good. And then
I made that mistake before. So.
Yeah. and. Yeah, you were the electrician, so she knows way more than.
So I actually understand how electric circuits work. So that was fun to like be able to apply my physics knowledge.
And there weren't any like tight spots that were like impossible to get to. Or...
Oh, there were like the corners for electrical were really tough. Like I had to use a drill and then like fish the lines through, and it was hard to.
100-year-old plus house.
Yeah. The plumbing in the kitchen goes into the crawl space and it's really tight. And so there was some fun times crawling in there trying to cut old pipes and then even like, so we had finished all the plumbing in the kitchen and we were about to, 1 day away from our plumbing inspection. And we were doing the test where, you go up to the roof and you fill up all the pipes. And it was old vent pipes that we obviously didn't touch, but they're so old that they were corroded open and there was a giant leak in there. So at the last second, like the night before the inspection, we had to completely cut out a whole new section and replace it. And that was just one of the, many fun, unexpected things you run into during a renovation.
Wow, that's really impressive.
I mean, one thing I want to come back to, the story you told me when I was here last time was ripping out the bathroom and not having a bathroom for a week or 2. So.
Well, we were just talking about this. So we, our whole goal the entire time was to have the bathroom completed by the time we got the new tenant upstairs. Well, really it was to have the whole project done, but projects don't go on time, as we now know. So the goals kept shifting. So at first it was get the whole
So you
project
rented
done.
out your upstairs before you had your downstairs.
That's correct.
Ready to go, basically.
So it was a
Yes.
September 1 lease start date upstairs where we were temporarily living.
Okay.
And so we were working like crazy, not only to update the upstairs, and that was all cosmetic, different finishing, lighting, like just refresh it, painting, and working on here. And we were doing like 2 a.m. nights and working our regular 9 to 5 jobs. So your weekends are absolutely gone. And like Sandy said, we just kept pushing back like, okay, well, we can live without, like a shower, and okay, now we can live without a sink. And then it went down to like, okay, we can live without everything except our toilet. We need a toilet. And then we realized like 2 days before September 1st, we're like, we are not going to have a toilet. Because you were trying to tile as fast as you could, but it was like,
finished tiling the floor.
yeah. So the tenant moved in September 1st upstairs, and we did not have a toilet. And we were living here without a sink, without a shower. And it took 4 days before we got our toilet installed. And we were walking over to Blend Coffee. Shout out to the local business owner over there. Yeah. But they were charging us $5 for those lattes, so we paid the price. Yeah. So anywhere that would take us in, I think next time around I would
just get a porta potty.
get a porta potty. Yeah. That would probably be
4
easier.
days. I'll do it.
And then, you go through all those fun things. Like I said, we didn't have a shower. So like every few days we were going over someone's place to get a shower in, right? Because you're getting dirty and sweaty from working on the place too.
Yeah.
It's good motivation though. It's like what does Swinza say? It's like put your back against the wall where you can't retreat. So if you've got like if you're forced to build a shower then you're gonna build it faster.
I don't
right?
think that's what the quote is.
Yeah, no, he said he basically puts their back against the cave so you can't run away.
Well, I don't think it's about building a shower.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's the same idea, right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Certainly motivation though, that's for sure. Like I remember our first shower here when we finally got it done was like
very exciting.
The most beautiful thing of all time.
And it's actually pretty fun to take a shower and just stare at your tile work, I gotta say. It's very, very proud.
Yeah, so I guess once the tenant moved upstairs, we were still working on this place for a few months because after we ultimately did finish the kitchen and bathroom, then you would think you're absolutely exhausted from all that work, but you're like, okay, what's next? And then where we're sitting right now, the living room and dining room, we're like, we need to refresh everything out here, right? We need to open up and redo the fireplace and the built-in.
Retile the fireplace and paint, and that's about it, but it took a while.
That's it? That's it? Okay.
No, there was a lot of patching of holes and things of that sort. Even just the littlest things take so much time, right? Like I'm thinking about like the drawers on here, some of the corners were broken off, like getting pieces of wood cut the exact way, then getting wood filler or Bondo on there, and then priming a few times, a few layers of paint. Like that little thing takes so many hours of time sometimes.
And after all that love, you feel like you'll be able to just rent it out and move into a new place now?
Ooh.
It's the sad part. Yeah. You have to drag me out of here. I love it.
Yeah,
we did too good of a
I
job.
can get you another project.
Yeah, but after all this work, it was funny too because we were trying to get it all done by the holidays. We had both families coming in time, and it was like once again it was this countdown. It was very similar to like when the tenant was going to move on upstairs. You're like, okay, we have to do this, and that, and then the storm is coming through and people are moving their flights up, and we're like, we don't have additional days. Like the guest bedroom, it was completely full of everything that was out here.
Storage unit, basically.
Oh, so again, you're back to really late nights and trying to finish everything. But at the end of the day, I'm happy because those types of deadlines just give you all the motivation in the world, and then you can put it behind you. So now we have the upstairs refreshed where the tenant is. We have our unit almost completely done. We have the bedrooms left. Hopefully that's not too much work. Yeah. And then, then we're looking for property number 2 this year. Mm-hmm. So,
and do you think you're going to kind of do the same? You want to do a full redo down to the studs again?
Great question. We're keeping our options open for sure. I don't know that we're not ruling out a 100-year-old property. If it comes our way and it's perfect, then sure. But at least we like have that understanding now going into looking for properties of what an older house is going to take to actually get it up to a nice rent caliber. And
if there's something in between, that would be really nice. Because I mean, when we say we went down to the studs, like we actually
replace studs,
replace like floor choice. Like we had to do everything, and thank God for Tony on some of those items that like we couldn't even find stuff on YouTube for. Like he was able to find out creative strategies for things that we probably would have had to pay a pretty penny to a contractor, but we get a family discount through Tony. But yeah, and like even though the kitchen, it was really funny. So you expect it to be plaster or like drywall, but even that, when we were demoing, it was like,
interlocking wood planks
that they had
wall.
They repurposed like the old front porch that they had to build the kitchen.
Wow, interesting.
It took me a whole week just to demo the walls in the kitchen.
I mean, 100 years old. I mean, 100 years ago. I mean, they're using anything to build a house. You know.
Yeah, this house has seen some things.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully there's something in between, and yeah, I'd like to do progressively get bigger with our deals. So yeah, if we can find like a triplex or things along those lines, and also we're not ruling out, like I know Stephen, you've gotten into short-term rental space, and there's additional effort but incremental reward as well too. So we don't want to rule that out.
Honestly, when I walked in here, I thought that this was like you were staging this to be a short-term rental. When I walked in, I was like, "Oh, this looks super nice." I didn't realize that you guys lived in here because it's so immaculate.
Oh, wow! Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, Sandy's done a lot of the staging, and I think that helps too. Fun. Actually, when you're putting up listings, even that's what helped us upstairs, was just staging it really nice and modern and whatnot. So I feel like that would be a nice skill that we could take to the short-term space or mid-term. Yeah, anything that's furnished.
I mean, it's definitely like a beautiful space, and I'm hoping we can get a video afterwards and put it on the end of the video. But yeah, I mean, have you guys had a chance to kind of just sit down and think like, was this property before, rents wise, etc., value, how much value you've added until now in comparison?
Yeah. So I can quickly go over some numbers. So we'll start off with upstairs, because that was just a nice little refresh, and I kept track of all the expenses for it. So we ended up spending.
Are you a CPA?
Actually, yes, I am. But don't ask me to do your taxes. So upstairs, we ended up putting in just under $3,000, right? But then in terms of incremental rent, over $300 more per rent. So if you do the math on that, in less than a year, you have your full return, right? So that was pretty awesome. Nice. Now, on the unit that we live in, and you can see the types of finishings in the kitchen and bathroom and everything, expenses were much higher, right? So in total, it was around $40,000.
That's it?
USD.
Wow.
Well, that's put the work in.
Yeah. So, sweat, equity.
Didn't pay much for labor, I guess.
Yeah. And exactly. So $40,000, and that feels initially like, ouch, that's a big chunk. But we were also expecting, right? That's why I wanted to go FHA route, go low money down, put money into renovations. Of course, you can get loans for the renovations, but we had the cash, so put it into the place, and the rents in here we're expecting to go from $1,700 to around $2,300. So that's a pretty big jump as well. And our ultimate goal, I talked about just wanting to be a base hit. So when we move out, then, if you think about these numbers, we'll be cash flow positive by probably $500 a month, which is certainly not life-changing or anything, but with, inflation over time, right? And rents keep rising.
That's crazy though. I mean, that's a pretty good amount of cash flow, because you only did you put 5% down or 3.5%? I can't remember.
I can't either. 3, yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah.
That's crazy to be cash flowing at that much for, nice work.
Yeah. And if you think about it from like a finance perspective, this is what also got me excited in the beginning, is like, with a house, I'm only putting down 3.5%, right? So, but I'm benefiting from appreciation of an average of 3% on 100% of the asset, right? Like on almost $600K of the asset, right? But with like a stock, unless
you're not going to get
levered,
97% leverage on a stock.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you can find ways to do that, but generally speaking, you can't get that type of benefit. So it almost seems like a cheat code to be able to put, go so low money down. And now too, you published something about, the FHA, that upfront, fee went from 85 basis points.
Oh yeah. The annual mortgage insurance premium is a lot less now. Yeah.
So that's even better, right? So, and you get, your regular rate is lower than what a conventional would be before the PMI or MIP. So yeah, all in all, it seems pretty favorable. And that's why, since we use my FHA on this property, then we'll be using Sandy's FHA on the next property and go from there.
Brilliant strategy. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. And I will say is that, we're talking about cash flow, but you put so many improvements into this home, and just wait till you get this house appraised. I think it's appraised for significantly higher than it did when, there was a weird, I don't know, oil stain in the kitchen.
Oh yeah. And when you try and sell it, it's going to sell right away.
Oh yeah. Exactly. People love this class, a little bit of classic charm, 100-year-old, home, but modern touches, which I think you guys definitely did. So,
I mean, it's the kind of work that everyone wants to do their house, but you just don't really have the time or energy to do it. And oftentimes when flippers are doing it, they only care about their bottom line. So they're going to, do it quickly and not as nice fixtures. And you guys did a great job.
We were always trying to think of our future selves too. We're like, we don't want to cheap out or cut a corner or anything like that, because ultimately, if the tenant calls in the future, we're going to be the ones that have to fix it. So we're always just trying to do things the right way. Tony was big into that, especially anything you couldn't see, right? He was still really OCD about how we did the electrical wiring. It had to be in perfect lines, stapled down there. Yeah, everything like that. So, I mean, we tried to be as much of perfectionists as we could as beginners, which is, again, impossible, and you shouldn't expect that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, everything ended up turning out really nicely. And we also talked about, you're saying in the future it could appraise for more, and that's awesome. We can keep that refinance, option in our back pocket for the future if we need to draw down on that for another property.
I mean, maybe wait till rates drop again and, jump in and see. Maybe you might get over 20%. I mean, these were significant improvements. I know you spent $40,000 in materials. Just imagine how much you could have spent in labor.
Right.
Probably another $100,000.
Yeah.
To be honest, and for very good detailed work, which you guys went above and beyond what I ever expected you guys to do. I was thinking, hey, do you guys need some contractors? That's what I was thinking.
So you talked about kind of your plan moving forward for the next property, but what about your kind of longer term goals? I mean, are you always going to be doing this as your kind of side hustle, so to speak, or are you hoping to kind of have it be your main thing, or what's your plan there?
Well, one of our plans of the whole renovating experience and wanting to do everything was to figure out what we didn't like doing and what we enjoyed doing. So I think that we learned a lot from that, and going forward, right? Yeah, we might do a majority of the work, but then not all the work, and then slowly less and less. And I think, Stephen, you've kind of been through that as well. You're subbing out more than you probably used to, and over time, you probably want to just have a contractor do it all. But I
installed a doorknob last night, so because I got robbed, but it's okay.
Oh man,
it's okay. It was small,
but yeah, and then eventually grow in size of the properties, kind of snowball it, right? And then, I mean, eventually it would be nice if, long term, if you're looking at bigger deals, potentially some sort of syndication, getting, limited partners involved, and you're the sponsor of the deal. That would be the dream, right? Is just to continue to build the real estate portfolio, and maybe one time that's something that we could do full time and be able to quit our 9-to-5s.
Yeah. And just for right now, even just the immediate future, while we still have our normal jobs, we're have a goal ourselves of about one property a year. So we're in year 2 now, looking for property number 2. And we just want to kind of keep at that pace. If we can grow what that looks like, he said, from duplex to triplex or quadplex or something like that, that would be awesome. But just to keep it rolling, don't let up, but also there's no need to go quit our jobs and do this right away.
Right. I mean,
we can't
even if
all
you
be
did,
a Steven.
Well, even if you did one single family a year for a decade, I mean, think of the wealth that you could create with that. I mean, it's crazy.
And maybe to tie it all together, I talked a little bit about FIRE at the beginning. Well, there's the passive income from all this, because eventually you want to be able to be a place later in life, right, where you have enough passive income to pay for all of your expenses, where you don't need to do anything in terms of work if you don't want to, right? And that would be just a really comfortable position to be in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I mean, obviously you guys got started pretty recently, but if there is somebody, one of your friends asked you, like, how do I get started in real estate? What would you tell them?
Honestly, it's just to take action. We spent a lot of time analyzing. We spent a lot of time talking about it. But it wasn't until we like made the conscious decision to take action that things started moving. And that would just be the number one piece of advice.
Yeah. And I think, there's only a certain level of like planning preparedness, right? Like, yes, read a real estate book or two, or, listen to a couple podcasts. So you have to know like super high level, but as long as you're resourceful, like you're going to figure it out along the way. You don't have to have it all figured out. Like once like like good examples is like, right, like the tenant comes upstairs, I'm like, I didn't think about like leases, where to go, what terms to include, but you just figure it out kind of like on the fly, right? And you're going to be able to do it. But yeah, I mean, piece of advice I'd say is like, I would have just started earlier if possible. And hindsight's 20/20. You can't do that. But I would have told my younger self, take that risk, take the action, and go from there. And just like once we moved in, right, we were a bit nervous of like starting renovations on the place. And when the tenant turned over, we're like, is this really the time? We don't know anything. Like we're comfortable. It's a new city. Let's go explore the city. But no, it was like, all right, we took the action. We decided we are going to renovate, and we got through it. And here we are on the other side. And now we're hungry for more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's better than me. Much more planned than me, where I just signed blindly for this fourplex that somebody told me to buy. So, bravo.
So that works out too.
No, I think I really do appreciate that advice of just take action.
Yeah.
Because when you're sitting, you're analyzing, nothing actually happens.
No.
If anything, you're scaring yourself even more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you helped coach us with that too. You're like, enough of the analysis paralysis. Like,
I was like,
this
is rip open this wall, you'll be fine.
And I'm like, but the rent to purchase price ratio isn't not good enough. Yeah. So
it was a tough market to make that work.
Well,
we were just, turns out you did, right?
Yeah, we were just looking back at, because obviously we kept a spreadsheet of every property that we looked at or we were seriously considering, and this house was very middle of the pack. Like it wasn't a standout. It wasn't terrible, but it was middle of the pack, and we've completely made it work.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would have floated at all in terms of just like covering our costs if we rented the full thing out from the get-go. So yeah.
I mean, you got to think about it. With that spreadsheet you had, that was probably at list price. And what do those houses go for? Like true. Another $200,000 up to your numbers work after that. So,
That's true. That was actually a flaw in the spreadsheet in comparing, looking back. So very good call.
Yeah. It was a fun time. So
yeah.
So do you guys have like a Instagram that you do your story before and after, or anything where people can follow you at?
We do. Yeah. It's SMRT_real estate. And it's just some fun before and after videos.
And we just created it actually.
Oh,
because we were like,
I was glad to say, I don't remember this.
No, we have 0 followers right now.
No, my mom. That's no.
Okay.
Well, you're about to get 2 more at least.
Because everyone's always asking, like, for the before and after shots and everything like that. So I figured, let's just put it on there, and like for future endeavors too, we can put on there, or even film little experiences to give other people like confidence. Like, yeah, I can do this, replace that, and just show our journey as we go along the way.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Great.
Well, yeah, great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel like we learned a lot from you guys, and really appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys both for both mentorship and friendship along the way. I look forward to many meetings in our future.
We'll be here for the rest of the journey too. So no worries.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.